The Senate is currently in recess. We will be so for another 10 minutes.
Section of the bill, it's section 45A, chapter 18, I think it's article 5, and it's language in the bill that relates to work stoppages and strikes. And in the bill, it simply says that in the circumstance of a work stoppage or strike, there cannot be any extracurricular activities that take place. My amendment, if adopted, Mr. President, by the Senate, would replace that section with some broader language, and I'd like to just describe it briefly to the body. Let me, before I do that, back up a little bit. Before last year, the last teachers' strike in West Virginia was in 1990, and in 1990 there was a teachers' strike. It started in some counties and went to, over time, to other counties. In Jefferson County, the Jefferson County Board of Education directed its counsel, its attorney, to file a lawsuit against the Jefferson County Education Association and representatives of the class of people who were teachers failing to report for work or duty. And the Jefferson County Board of Education asked its attorneys to file a suit and to ask the court to order the teachers to return to their duties, to work. And a suit of that nature was filed in the circuit court of Jefferson that same day or any part of it. Subsection F says that no superintendent may close a school in anticipation of a work stoppage, in anticipation of or to facilitate a concerted work stoppage or strike. So, Mr. President, I would contend that except for Putnam County, which showed enormous resolve and strength this year, and the state constitutions guarantee freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and the right to petition government for redress of grievances.
And I think we can also agree that those are what we might call fundamental rights because they're in the first 10 amendments or the Bill of Rights, right?
They are indeed.
And I tell you where you lost me during your fairly persuasive argument, because you're good at this. How was it that their being here violates the Constitution's, our state constitutional right or obligation rather to provide a free and fair education to our students? How does that constitutional right come into play as we balance their rights with that?
So what I would say is their attendance here today and exercise of those rights does not violate anything. Today is a Sunday. Today is not a school day. They have not signed a contract to teach school that requires them to do so on Sunday.
All right, let me ask you this. Fair point. But going back to when we were here before, the contract, if you weigh the rights under a contract or the obligations versus the fundamental constitutional rights that you've acknowledged, isn't there a balancing that comes into play there? And I'm just asking you, how in the world can their presence here, exercising those rights back during the regular session, impede the student's constitutional right to be educated when the days are going to be made up?
Well, the days do not necessarily have to be made up, first of all. Secondly, I don't think, we've talked about in this last year a strike that lasted for
valuable they are to our society, how valuable they are to our state. And the reason why they got the wage increase that they got last year and at least some relief to PEIA is because they organized, because they made their voices heard. And they didn't do it through violence. They did it by coming here to this house.
Every single government employee shut down their section of government when they're disenfranchised. What happens in our jails? What happens in our prisons? What happens in our state hospitals?
And to the chairman from Morgan County who had that chart yesterday about all the red states and the white states, I wonder if he could tell us how many of those states that were red also allow strikes. Because you're going to find out most of the states do allow it. And when it's handy for us to compare ourselves to the rest of the nation, we do, and when it's not, we don't. But all I'm saying is we're on some pretty shaky ground here. It's mean-spirited, but at the end of the day, what we're doing here is penalizing people for trying to make their lives better. That's what I call a real democracy, and that's why we have a Constitution. I strongly oppose this.
Further discussion? Further discussion before I recognize Senator Morgan to close debate. Is there further discussion? Recognize the senator from Morgan to close the debate. Senator from Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will be brief. I do want to respond to a couple of the points that have been made in argument in opposition to this amendment. First of all, I want to reiterate what I believe this largely is a recodification, or I should say a codification, of what is the current law of West Virginia, as I understand it. This is not new. It's been the law since 1990. According to our Supreme Court, there is no right to strike for public employees. This is designed to help the children by making sure that they will be in school when they should be in school, that they will be receiving an education that they are entitled under the Constitution to receive from the teachers who signed contracts, Mr. President, who signed a contract promising to be in the classroom and teach. I do not think it's wrong or radical, and certainly I do not think it is mean-spirited, it's not intended to be, to say, if you sign a contract to do a job, the taxpayers have the right to expect that you will do it, that you will honor your contract. I think it's important to be in this bill because I am concerned that without it, a court could interpret Senate Bill 1039, if it passes, as undermining
Senate will please come to order. Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our request unanimous consent to return to the fourth order of business.
Is there objection? Chair hears none. Introduction of bills, reports from standing committees.
Your Committee on Rules has had under consideration Senate Bill 1040, Education Savings Account Act, and reports the same back with the recommendation that it do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mitch Carmichael, Chairman ex officio.
Report will be received. The Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our request unanimous consent that the bill be taken up a first time, committee reference be dispensed with, and read first time.
Is there objection? Objection's been heard. Junior Senator from 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill be read a first time.
Junior Senator from 17th moves that the bill be taken up for immediate consideration and read a first time. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Declare the motion adopted. Clerk will read the bill a first time.
Senate Bill 1040, Education Savings Account Act. First reading of the bill.
Bill be advanced. Remarks by members of the Senate. Senior Senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. Yesterday when I spoke in remarks I've got this handout for you, and I was telling you that our revenue estimates were approximately $23 million above for the month of May. Actually, it came in with a little bit of a revision yesterday afternoon while we were doing it, and we are actually up $46.3 million. So that information is on your desk, and it'll also be in your email here before long, so you'll have it in a PDF format. Real briefly on that part of it.
State a point of order.
I have a point of order, Mr. President.
Senator may state his point.
I think that's a gross misrepresentation of what was said by the senator from Montague County.
We can pull it.
Wait 1 second.
For our teachers, only when they struck did they get a 5% pay raise. That's resulted in 700 plus uncertified teachers in our state. That makes it tough to teach our children and get the results we want. So what do? Mike Romana gets up, talks about how bad the bill is. And to my friend from the 4th, I think the Senate Democrats did introduce a whole bevy of separate bills that we think would have fixed or helped fix our public education system, certainly would have helped our educators. But I put on everybody's desk, and if you didn't take a second to look at it, I'm going to take a second to tell you about it. This is from the Doddridge County School System. In 2009,
Further remarks? Junior Senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. It sounds, there's first of all, I'm very honored to serve with every single individual in this Senate, both sides. No one knows the sacrifice, the dedication that each and every single guy goes through. It's not just coming down here and running floor Senate stuff. It's every day, emails, constituent calls. And so it is an honor to serve with each and every one of us. And I know that things have got a little heated and the debate has gotten strong, but I would just encourage each and every one of us, myself included, that we keep our comments objective to the point you're trying to make. All that is saying is my kids, I can speak personally, if they're too sick or they can't go to school, don't ask me to go to ball games or dances and every teacher I've spoken with, I've yet to have one that didn't agree with that. If a child can't go to school, they shouldn't be playing sports or athletics or extracurriculars. So what message do we send? If these are the three sticking points, and we'll debate this bill, I know, tomorrow, but what message do we send when we say something is so important? And I'm not downplaying the urgency or the importance of when there's a work stoppage or a strike that goes on. Obviously it is, but if it's so important that academics, which should be our number one goal, has to be stopped, what message do we send them to turn right around and say, oh, but go play sports, go do this, go do that, go to this practice or whatever? It's a poor message, period. Forget about the bill, forget about charters and everything else, and that's just so it was easy for me to vote on the chairman's amendment to say that athletics shouldn't be allowed. RIF situations, there's code in that. We're not taking away anybody's seniority. Seniority is important when you put time in, but that's in the policy, currently in code. There's 12, 13 steps. 2 or 3 of them refer or relate back to seniority. We're not taking away. We're just saying the same thing that's in the hiring criteria. And then charter schools. You either like them, you don't like them. Now, my only, there's all this concern about this being a big Republican idea all of a sudden. Again, Senator Eric Wells, who was married to our Natalie Tennant, who was the Secretary of State, I think everyone would say they're very strong Democrats. He tried to pass this bill in 2009. He fought very hard for this bill. In 2010, Governor Manchin, he's not a Republican. I don't think he's in Alex Pocket. Tried to pass charter schools. He called special session, just like we are right now, to pass charter schools because the other states were doing them and seeing success. So if you don't like them, don't vote for it. But we've tried to make the charter, we've listened, we've gone across the aisle, we've listened to make the charters potentially in this state as careful. We've taken away anybody that can come in and do for-profit charters. We didn't allow private charters. We've given it, it's just authorizing language. There is not a single thing in this bill that says a charter school ever will exist in the state of West Virginia. All it says is if their county, if the teachers and the parents get together and they say, hey, we would like to try this, then we will join the other 90% of the U.S. states, D.C. and their territories that have allowed this, and they're growing and they're prospering. If it's such a Republican idea, then take it, do whatever with, but the California, New York, the most liberal states in the country, they're growing leaps and bounds. Over 100,000 kids in just the past 5 years in New York State has moved to charters. So if it's such a Republican idea, why are all the Democrat states doing it? Why does Obama strongly support it? Why did both Clinton strongly support it? Why did the Bushes support it? This is the one thing where everybody locks hand in hand across the country, except in this state. And maybe it's because when charters take up, oftentimes what happens, union membership plummets. I can care less if every single teacher in a charter is a union member. I can care less. That's certainly their right to do that. But the fact is, once they're supported, and by the way, charters were a union idea. ATF, nationally, AFT, strongly supports charters. NEA strongly supports charters. It's on their website, so don't take my word for it. If it's such a bad idea, why do the national organizations, why does Randy Weingarten, who's the president of the national AFT, run a charter school? Why is it that their kids should be allowed to have something, but you come down and tell us, but your kids shouldn't be allowed to have it? If they're so bad, why are no states repealing them? If they're so bad, I mean, I can do a lot to you, you can do a lot to me, we can forgive each other, but you hurt your kids, boy, that's a whole different ball game. So if they're so bad, do you not think the constituents of those states would have jumped up and spoken and these things would have been shut down? But that's not what you're seeing. They're growing in every single state. So if that's the case, why would we deny our children the right to something that may help them? Because at the end of the day, nobody's going to remember me being here or any of us being in this chamber. But if we collectively do something that helps the kids that are coming up, then we've done something. We've done something here that is bigger than us, and we did the job that we came here to do. So tomorrow, if you agree with them, fine. If you don't, fine. But just vote it, and that's what we're here for. We all vote every day on things we like, things we don't like. But if those are the only...
And I'd like to refer to you a study that was conducted by Jack Snyder, a professor, assistant professor of education at the University of Massachusetts. He's the director of the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessment and co-host of the Education Policy podcast, Have You Heard? Sit down and take a look and see what's happening. In Chicago, he says it's hot, the charter schools are in hot water and likely to get even hotter. Only a handful expressed any support for a runoff election for charter schools. And that's a hotbed. Chicago's a hotbed for charter schools. But the two runoff candidates for an election were very cold on charter schools. That was in Chicago. In New York, in February, Cities' elected parent representatives, the Community and Citywide Education Council, issued an unanimous statement in which they criticized charter schools for operating free from public oversight and for draining substantial resources from districts. You know, there's a lot of things going on if it's not well defined. Mayor de Blasio told a parent forum group that not too distant future, his administration would seek to curtail the marketing efforts of cities' charters. You know, around the country. And I can go on and on. Los Angeles. The governor even came out. There were many supporters. Even he was a supporter. He responded by appointing a task force to investigate the financial impact on traditional charter schools. And the study goes on and on, picking out discrepancies. It seems that the trend in this country is to slow down. 30 years ago, this was a great idea. But as they were developed and as they are now in play, we're getting the feedback, and the feedback is not good. So why do we rush in to wanting to have charter schools right now without any question? And the only reason this bill is included charter schools with the pay raise is because there's not much hope on the other side that this is going to get done. You know, Mr. President, I know you're having a sidebar up there, but
I'm sorry.
The interim process, we are missing a golden opportunity that now that we're in the interims, that we're designed to study issues that are relevant. Education has always been a relevant issue. Charter schools is an issue. Let's use the interims that we so well deserve to study charter schools. Let's come back in the regular session and have a plan. Let's start not like we did in the last session where we were presented a bill and the thing started to run and it got more contentious and everybody dug in. The education groups dug in. The party to my left dug in. We dug in. And we dug deep holes. And now that we look out, we can barely get our nose above the ground. And it's very difficult now to go back to our constituents and say, oh, we're going to, we caved in. Nobody wants to cave in. We just want to do the right thing. I know I got some consternation when you and I met for the past 2 weeks on a daily basis and went down every point in this bill. And I kept hearing, oh, you're caving in. You can't do that. You're caving in. Well, you know what? If we'd have come out with a deal that we could both live with, I would have voted on it because decisions are tough to make and it'd be the right thing to do. I'm not doing it for constituent groups. I'm doing it for the betterment of education. So let's slow this thing down. Let's study it in the interim. We don't know what the House is going to do when they come in on the 17th. We're not going to come in, I assume. There won't be any interims because we have to have both houses to have interims, so we probably won't even show up then. I just don't know where we're going, and tempers are getting short, and things seem to just, get worse, and we've got to slow down. We have to have some civility, and we have to respect this institution, and let's try to do the best thing for education. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further remarks? Recognize the senior senator from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Unanimous consent that the junior senator from the 17th from Berks be printed in the Journal.
Is there objection?